Hey guys, welcome back. This video is going to be unique for my channel because I am doing a collaboration video today with Megan from Smarty and Stevo, and we're going to talk about how infertility has impacted us, not only as person but also how it changes your pregnancy. So if you haven't followed my journey for long or at all, I had to conceive through IVF because I have a balanced translocation chromosome disorder, and I should not attempt to have children naturally because we can have a lot of either miscarriages or birth defects, things like that. I can link below the video that talks about why we had to do IVF in case you are new to this video. And then Megan, for those of you that haven't followed her, conceived after 3 years, finally with Clomid. So we've both been through a pretty rough battle with infertility and have been married for 5 years or longer roughly. So it'll give us a chance to really talk about how it changes that. So first I wanted to talk about how infertility changes you as a person, just without the pregnancy piece of it. So a few things that I've seen infertility do, and not always in respect to me, but just in general, is it creates an environment of negativity. You get used to being told that things aren't going to work. You get used to preparing yourself for the absolute worst outcome of everything. And you get really upset, and subconsciously or consciously even, when other people get what you want without having to work for it. So, for example, I'll adjust this camera here a little bit. For example, I have some really great friends that really struggle with pregnancy announcements. So when people would announce that they're pregnant either on Facebook, Instagram, or tell them in person even, they would really struggle with that because it stings when people can get what you want so easily, especially when it's something that's so natural, something that you should be able to do without help. So that's definitely something that bleeds into other parts of your life too. So you start to get that mentality that nothing's supposed to go the way it does. So then the normal things in your life start to impact that mentality too, and it can become a very spiraling, out of control circumstance that can almost lead, it does, leads to, in some people, very severe depression, because you've taken the one thing someone wants, something that their body biologically craves, and you tell them that they can't have it, and then they continue to try month over month. Their hopes get up and then they get down, and then eventually you get to a point where that negativity just becomes a constant part of who you become. So I've seen some people on the other end of this spectrum, and I've seen how infertility can make you appreciate things differently as well. So while that negativity piece sounds very awful, I will say that the people that I know that have fought for infertility are stronger than most people I know. They can battle things most people would never expect, and they're just more prepared to not only handle being a parent, but they're more prepared with just the everyday struggle of life because they've had to fight for things that most people don't have to fight for. So even if you know people that have been in situations that were hard on their childhood or adulthood or whatever, it's the same type of circumstance. When people have to continually battle for something, it makes you stronger after it breaks you down. So it really hurts and it makes it really hard. And especially in something like infertility, when you live with the fact that anyone and everyone will ask you why you don't have kids and ask you if you do, and will ask you things like, are you sure you're doing it right? Or are you sure you know what you're doing? Or maybe you're not trying hard enough, or telling you things like, the sex is supposed to be the fun part. When you deal with things like that on a daily basis, it can become even harder to battle because it's not something like, I really don't even know what to compare it to, but it's not something that you can just take and figure out a game plan, work through it, and be done. This is something that requires an exceptional amount of patience. And that's what I would say as far as how it impacts you as a person. Now, I could go on for days about how infertility impacts you, but I think I'll cut it short on that part. I also wanted to talk about how infertility impacts you once you are pregnant. So for me, having 2 prior losses, and a lot of my friends I know that have 2 prior losses, it takes away the innocence of pregnancy is the absolute easiest way to describe it for you. So you see people, and I was like this the first time I found out I was pregnant, that are so excited and they share with the world, and every piece of their pregnancy, you know, they may have hiccups. I'm not saying they don't have normal pregnancy issues, but it's smooth, and they get to enjoy every step of pregnancy. And in a lot of cases, not all, let me preface that, but not all cases, they don't go to bed at night praying for things so specific as, please don't let my child be born before 37 weeks. Please don't let me have another miscarriage. Please don't let me have any bleeding. Because they don't think of that. They've never dealt with it. So to them, this is just a normal progression. And in their mind, going to 40 weeks for pregnancy is normal. So you get robbed of that innocence. And there are other things, of course, that can take that away from you besides infertility. Someone watching infertility can even feel that way because they've seen people that have been through it. But you get the parts of pregnancy that are supposed to be the absolute most enjoyable are completely stripped from you. So for me, I made it a point when we got pregnant this time through IVF, because we knew the embryo was genetically normal, that I was not going to do that. That I was not going to be that person who didn't take pictures, who didn't buy anything, who didn't plan for their room, who didn't get excited, because I was not going to let that take that innocence away from me, so much so that I was miserable for 40 weeks. Because you know what? If she's going to be born, she's going to be born. If she's not, she's not. And I have no control over that. So I'm going to enjoy pregnancy while I can. But a lot of people that have dealt with pregnancy loss before or infertility don't get that. Their bodies and their minds react to pregnancy in a totally different way. So while you see some people whose pregnancy is very easy, whose pregnancy is very exciting and everything like that, that's not always the case with someone who's been through infertility. For me, I made it a point for that to not be an issue. Another thing that I wanted to talk about of how it affects pregnancy is it makes you appreciate smaller milestones so much more. I don't think that more than someone who hasn't done infertility or hasn't had to deal with that, but it just makes you appreciate them differently would be the best way that I can describe them. So for example, for the normal person, rolling over 12 weeks is a huge deal. But for someone dealing with infertility, 8 weeks is a huge deal, 10 weeks is a huge deal, 12 weeks is a huge deal, and then 14 weeks for the second trimester is a huge deal, and then 20 weeks for your anatomy scan, and then 24 weeks for viability. Your milestones are substantially different than what some people would deal with because they are not looking at the clock concerned about what's going to happen. And I think that that changes how you perceive your pregnancy, and it also changes the way that you bond with your baby. So for me, I want to say it was about 16 weeks. I reached out to a really good friend of mine who has been my rock through IVF and pregnancy, Sarah, and I asked her, I said, does it make me a bad parent already that I don't feel any bonding to this child? And she said no, that she had dealt with the same thing and didn't even feel bonded to the baby until after it was born and had some time to really take in being a parent. Whereas most people, they feel that first kick, or they feel flutters, or they do whatever and they have that bonding experience. Whereas we have already created a pregnancy built around fear or pregnancy built around worry, that we don't have that. And it's not that it's something we do intentionally. It's something that you recognize is wrong, and something that you, or not wrong, that's different, that you recognize and that you want to address and that you try so desperately to fix, but you can't, because it's already become such an ingrained part of your experience that you don't know how to eliminate that from being part of that for you. So overall, a few things. First of all, with pregnancy, it definitely makes it more, you plan more. So like you're looking forward to those milestones, you're looking forward to those experiences, but it can also make it more negative feeling for you because of the fact that it creates a lot of worry. Now, in regards to pregnancy, I also wanted to talk about how it impacts your partner. So I didn't ask my husband, I'll preface this, for any of his input here, but I can tell you just from experience some of the things that he has dealt with because of our infertility. So first and foremost, that fear and that anxiety that is with the parent or with the mother is totally with the father as well. I remember on our way to our 8-week or 6-week appointment, it was our very first appointment with our RE, where they were going to do an ultrasound, and he was sweating bullets. He was incredibly nervous, and he was adamant there was going to be no heartbeat. And I had already created this mindset for myself of, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to have a negative pregnancy, but I couldn't bring him to the same spot. Same thing happened at almost every ultrasound since then. He was very nervous at any appointment where we had concerns about my blood pressure, or we were having concerns about preeclampsia. And even to this day at our 20-week ultrasound, he was so afraid something was going to be wrong. So I think that it breeds a different level of negativity and worry that you wouldn't expect, even with the dads who aren't the ones that are dealing with the physical aspects of pregnancy. So I think that's an important piece to note there as well. I think when you look at how it impacts the mother, sometimes it's obvious and you would expect it, but I think when you look at how it impacts the father, sometimes that doesn't seem as obvious, and it doesn't seem as likely, but it is, and it's something that they struggle with just as easily as we do. And I know for men too, it's hard for them to get attached. My husband doesn't really like doing much in her room. He got a little nervous when we painted it so early and started putting furniture together. And then our baby shower is actually going to be a little earlier in the pregnancy than normal because of the holidays. So he was a little nervous about all of that because of the fear of what could go wrong. So I think that it's important too that when you're recognizing how infertility impacts you as a person, and through your pregnancy that you're impacting how, or you're understanding how it's impacting the men that are involved in infertility too. I think that's about all I've got to say on here, because I could ramble on this subject for a long time about all the different ways that infertility changed me. But the last thing that I wanted to say is overall, it has made me appreciate the struggle and my daughter in a whole different way than I think I ever could have before. I don't think not going through infertility makes you a bad parent. I don't think it makes you any less appreciative of your children, but I think it helps us who have dealt with it have a different level of appreciation, and it's an entirely different level of commitment than I think most people understand. And one of the things that I have said from the very beginning, and that I tell everyone who struggles with infertility, is that our children will never wonder if they were wanted. They will never wonder if they were that mistake that their parents didn't want, if they were the cause of their, relationship failure, or if they were the reason their parents didn't go to college, or just whatever the reason might have been. Because our children will know that not only were they wanted, but we had to fight for them, and we still did, and we got up every day, and we went through the motions, and we went through the sadness, and we just kept pushing through. So I think in one respect, infertility brings a whole different level of appreciation from the children's side too, because if you share with them what you went through when they're older, of course, I think they'll understand how much more it means to them too. So I apologize, this video was a little bit longer than I originally anticipated, but be sure to check out Megan's video below and share your experiences, of course, with infertility and how it's impacted you. And I'd love to know more about your experiences with pregnancy with infertility as well. Until then, guys, have a great night.